My name is Jillian Casey. Today is December 7, 2010. I'm here with Leinoff at the Glenette Highland. And how are you today?
Not as good as I was 50 years ago.
Okay, are you ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you just tell me when and where you were born?
I was born in Manhattan, New York City, Manhattan, borough of Manhattan.
And what was your date of birth?
I was born on January 28, 1923, which means that next month, January 28, 2011, I will be 88 years old.
88 years young.
Yeah. Thank you.
What type of education did you have before you went into the war?
I had a high school education. I was a high school graduate, and I had been working, been out of high school maybe 2 years or so, and I was working for a lithographic printer.
What did that involve?
Lithographic printer?
Yeah.
Well, the industry is highly technical in that it requires a lot of chemistry and a lot of printing presses and a lot of camera work, big gallery type camera work, and my last position with them was as an apprentice lithographic printing plate maker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What was it like growing up for you during the Great Depression?
Well, when you're young, you take everything in stride. And I knew that these were hard times. My parents struggled. My father worked 7 days a week. My mother had to contribute too. She had to work. And we were having a rough time in that money was always tight. We could never even think of college or anything like that at that particular time. So I had a good childhood. I don't have any regrets about the years. As I say, I took it in stride. I figured this is the way things were, this is the way things are, and this is the way things are going to always be. Because when you're young, you feel that that's the way the world is.
Right. What did your parents do?
My father had a small factory where he was manufacturing children's garments, winter garments for children. And he had a factory in Manhattan, and our summertime vacations were not really all play. We were expected, well, I had two brothers, and we were all expected in the summertime to come in and help at the factory. And my mother too helped at the factory. So my first introduction to work, getting a salary job, was for my father in that was about the 1930s.
And you said you had two brothers?
I'm sorry?
You had two brothers?
Yes, I have two brothers, younger brothers.
Any other siblings or just?
No.
Do you remember where you were when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th?
Yes, we were frequently moving around the city. Although I was born in Manhattan, we lived in the Bronx, and we used to change apartments when they were so plentiful that the landlords were offering all kinds of inducements to make you move from one place to the other. So we kind of hopped around, and at that time I was living in the West Bronx, and it was a nice apartment building in those days. It's not there anymore, but in those days we had a good life there. Right.
What was going through your mind when you heard that the United States had been attacked?
Well, I had a strong feeling. At that time, I was, about 18, 19 in there. And I had a strong feeling that I was going to be involved in this war. When it happened, that Sunday, which is today's date.
Yeah,
anniversary.
anniversary.
I knew I was going to be involved, but just when and how hadn't occurred to me. I had a job. I was contributing to the family income, and as I say, I knew that ultimately I would be involved. Europe was already at war, and we were trying to stay out of it as best we could, but so many things were going wrong, and we realized that the enemy wouldn't be very kind to us if he got the upper hand, and we knew that it's going to have to be an all-out effort, which it was. In those days when we went to war, the whole country knew we were at war.
Yeah.
It's not like today. We're at war, we have 2 wars going, and most of the people don't even know about it. You don't feel anything.
It's different.
Those that went to war, we had all kinds of rationing and restriction about showing lights out at night, you know, and we had block marshals who used to come around, you know, and give advice, and we were collecting fat, you know, lard, to help our troops, and it was a case of everybody in the country putting their shoulder to the wheel.
Right.
Yeah. It's not like today. I feel sorry for the poor guys today. They don't have all the people behind them. People are very disgusted with the war. And,
yeah. How did your family feel about the attack? Your
well,
brothers?
yeah, well, we all, I think, had the same idea that this war was for real. Now, we're Jewish, and we knew what was going on. We got word from Europe what was going on in Hitler's Germany, and we knew that sooner or later his ambitions were to dominate actually the whole planet if he could. That was his favorite expression, Deutschland über alles. I can't give you the exact German word, but he was saying today we have Germany, tomorrow the world.
Right.
Heute gehört Deutschland, morgen die ganze Welt. It means today Germany, tomorrow the world. We knew that the man had to be stopped.
Yeah. Is that why you wanted to join the service?
Well, I wanted to join the service because I felt our way of life was being threatened.
Right.
So you can say that because the man was a maniac, and I knew we were. If we don't defeat this man, sooner or later he'll come marching down this street.
Yeah.
So we had to go to war.
And when did you join the Marines?
Now, I joined the Marines in it was December. It was about a year later, after December 1940. No, December 1942, I believe. Yeah, 1942. Yes. Well, what happened was the services were being swamped with people joining up, and they couldn't take all the people at once. To absorb them, they had to build camps and barracks and facilities to house the men and to feed the men and arm them and clothe them and do everything. So even though I was sworn in 1942, the end of 1942, I was not called to active service until early January sometime, when there was room. Yeah.
Why did you choose to join the Marines?
Well, in those days I was a pretty much footloose and fancy-free guy, and I didn't have any strong ideas about which service to join or not. I had a friend who convinced me that we're going to go in together and we're going to join a real fighting outfit. We're going to get into the Marines. So I went along with my friend Stuart, and my folks did not like it. I still had to have my folks okay on it. At that time, 18 was not old enough. But I convinced them that it's going to happen sooner or later. I'm going to be drafted one way or another. And it took a lot of agonizing, but I decided I would go in with my friend Stuart. My friend Stuart, he said his parents would give him an okay. They didn't. So I went in without Stuart.
By yourself.
Stuart joined later on in the war. Yeah, about a year and a half later, he also went into the Marines, but we didn't go in together. And it was a strange set of circumstances under which I was enlisted. At the time, I figured that with the war on our hands and the National Guard being called up. We had no National Guard left at home, really. New York State and many other states formed its own state guards, and we had a New York State Guard. So I joined that military organization, got a uniform, and everything, went to training and all, training as an infantryman. And when things were getting closer and closer, and I knew that I had to enlist, I said, well, I'm going to get out of the Guard, I'm going to join the Marines. So the first thing I did was going down to join the Marines, I was asked on a questionnaire, are you now a member of any military organization? And being a very truthful guy, which I'm no longer at that time, I said, yeah, I belong to the New York State Guard. It's a military organization. The Marines said, well, we can't take you until you go and get a discharge from them. We're not going to take a soldier on active duty with the state. I went back to my company commander, and I said I was trying to join the Marines, and before they'll take me, I have to be discharged from the State Guard. The commander said, no way, Jose. He said, you got to show us that you're enlisted in the Marines. We're not letting you go just for that. So, you know what the expression catch-22 means? Well, that was a catch-22. So I didn't know what to do. It was a dilemma. The Marines wouldn't take me, and they wouldn't let me go, the Guard. What I finally did was I waited a couple of weeks more, and I went down to re-enlist again, start out from scratch. And this time I lied on the application. I said, no, I'm not a member of the military organization. So, yeah, they took me.
Where did you go for basic training?
We go to where all good Marines on the eastern part of the United States go to, Paris Island, boot camp. And we had about, normally there was about an 8-week training period. At that time they were cutting things shorter. We spent about 6 weeks in training in North Carolina. That's in Beaufort, South Carolina. Paris Island is South Carolina. It just borders on North Carolina. And from there we went up to Camp Lejeune. After we got out of boot camp, I was assigned to an infantry outfit. We went into Camp Lejeune, and that's in North Carolina.
Which infantry outfit were you assigned to?
You know, at that time, they were just beginning to form division-based units. There was, the 1st Marine Division was already in existence, been in Guadalcanal and Bougainville and down the South Pacific. And they were organizing, at that time, what was called the 4th Marine Division. So my unit was part of the 4th Marine Division.
And when did you go overseas?
Okay, well, we did about 6 months or so in North Carolina, and they shipped us to a new base that had just opened up in California, Camp Pendleton, which was about halfway between San Diego and Los Angeles, in a nice sunny Southern California. And then we were shipped overseas to go into combat directly from the United States. It's kind of a first for our organization as a Marine division. It had never sent out a unit from the United States to go directly into battle, into the Marshall Islands. Our first operation was Marshall Islands. We went right from San Diego. We stopped a few days, didn't get off board. We didn't leave the ship in Hawaii just to resupply. We stayed aboard ship a couple of days, and then we proceeded to the operation. We were prepped for it pretty well. We were a pretty well trained organization by the time we got out. It was about a year between my being taken into Marine Corps and then the first operation. I had a good year of training. So that's what we did. Went to Marshall Islands and to the atoll of Kwajalein, and the 2 islands in the atoll we hit were Roy and Namur.
How did you keep in touch with your family back home?
Mail.
Yeah.
It was either email or V-mail or something like not email. It had a V-mail. It was a written letter.
Right.
A written letter with special paper. You fold it up, etc. Yeah. There were no telephones, no cell phones.
Yeah.
You could not communicate any other way than by mail, and all mail, of course, was being censored.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take a letter to get from where you were?
Well, I'm not sure exactly, but I would say it took at least a week, 10 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were all over the place before you got replies?
Before I go on?
Before your family wrote back to you?
Well, yeah, so I'd have to wait till the family wrote back. You wouldn't hear from them for maybe a month.
Mm-hmm.
A month would go by.
Mm-hmm.
But I got mail from various people, including my wife-to-be. At that time I was single, of course. And we were infants together. Our parents were friends. We had lived close together, but her family moved to Massachusetts, and my wife was raised in Massachusetts. And we hadn't seen each other for many years.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother induced my wife Lillian to send me some letters overseas. And so we kind of reunited. Just that we knew each other from infancy, but we separated for about 10, 12 years or so.
Wow.
So, yeah, we got mail. Everybody looked forward to getting letters and everything, and we wrote back, and yeah, made the best of it.
What did Lillian do anything during the war?
Yes, my wife Lillian worked for the government as an inspector for parts that were being sent overseas, particularly to Europe, for the mechanized tank wars.
Mm-hmm.
She had a job. She was living at that time in the borough of Brooklyn. The job she had required her to go from Brooklyn to New Jersey. Edgewater was a Ford plant at that time, and they were producing truck parts for shipping overseas. And there were problems with the way things were being crated and shipped and all. And as an inspector, she was trained. She had to go through training and all. And she had to inspect random, what do you call it, crates. She would select crates at random, open it up, and then check the inventory if it was correct. And I said many times she found that a crate would not have a full set of brakes to replace an apparatus, or sometimes it would have 4 left brakes and no right brakes. And she said it was not an easy job for her because they were anxious to get things out, move things out as fast as possible. And because she was delaying the operation by insisting that they put in the right materials, that were supposed to be in there, he said they even threatened her, threatened her life. Yeah, I think they had a union or something like that. It was a pretty threatening thing. But she survived. She went through the war working for them. Yeah. And so that's where we are. I'm overseas and she's over here.
Mm-hmm.
And we went into our first operation. I said Partial Atoll. Lasted about 5-6 days. Comparatively speaking, for what was yet to come, it was a kind of like a pushover. We lost men. There were losses, of course. But the last time the Marine Corps engaged in an operation, it was the island of Tarawa. Tarawa was an atoll island also.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with the map of the Pacific. It consists of a lot of underground mountains and all, which are really turn above water, become atolls, little islets and all. And the operation before us was Tarawa, and we took heavy losses on Tarawa because we were using Higgins boats, which were not able to negotiate the coral reefs. They got hung up on the coral reefs, which meant that if the men had to get to shore, they had to wade through hundreds of yards of water to get through. It's very shallow water in the coral reef. And the coral is very sharp, and you would tear your shoes, and there were sitting ducks. There was no place to get cover. So they took an awful beating on Tarawa. And that time, then it was decided we have to do something else. We can't use the Higgins boats. Higgins boats were good in that they were very, very fast.
Right.
They moved right along. But we needed a tracked vehicle, like a tank that could float. And they invented the half-track, which was a troop carrier, an open-top troop carrier, and that could ride right over the coral. If you got in, it moved very slow. It didn't have propellers on it. The cleats on the treads, the tank treads, were the propulsion device. It would push the water back and the vehicle would go forward. And it held maybe about 10 men or so, but it was very, very slow moving. Mm-hmm. And we had a few casualties. Luckily, the Navy and Naval Air Force had bombarded that island quite thoroughly. Kwajalein was a flat island. It was of strategic value because it had an airfield on it.
Right.
And there were no place for the Japanese really to dig in deep. They had their pillboxes, mm-hmm. but they were able to resupply their own ships from Kwajalein. We had to take it, and we wanted that airfield. Mm-hmm. So the Navy, Air Force did a very good job of bombing the island. So when we hit, it was comparatively light resistance. As I say, we had losses, but not on the scale with what was coming up.
Right, and that's...
So we took that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And coming up for you, that was Iwo Jima, correct?
Well, no, before that we had two more islands. We had in between, we had the islands of Saipan and Tinian, which were in the Marianas. Now that's getting close. They were about 1,500 miles south of Japan, and they were fortified for a much longer period than Kwajalein was. Mm-hmm. And they had growth. They had hills. It was like a washboard. It was up and down valleys, mm-hmm. up and down Saipan. And it was very hard to find out where you were being shot at. Mm-hmm. So we took a lot more losses on Saipan. But again, we had vehicles which were able to get us to shore. That these are not coral islands now, the Marianas. They were actually sandy beach islands, and we were able to get in with faster vehicles. But of course, the amount of fire that we took was enormous compared to what happened at Kwajalein. We lost a lot of men there getting on that, and that took more than 5 days. Saipan took about, let's say, about 30 days. Now the island is only about 18 miles long. It's shaped something like an upside-down monkey wrench. You know what a monkey wrench mm-hmm. looks like? You turn it upside down, you got an idea of what Saipan was like. The native population, the Comoros, had been under Japanese control for many years, and they were fed a lot of propaganda about how they should not surrender to the Americans. The American troops are barbarians and everything, and rather than surrender to it, they believe this stuff. And we tried to get women and children down because it was a manufacturing town too. It had a sugar mill, and they had agriculture. It was a very beautiful island, actually. But the people were so indoctrinated that rather than surrender, they jumped from the cliffs with the babes. There were movies, you might have seen them, I don't know, showing people who were trying to get them down, and they wouldn't trust us. So it was a very long operation, about a month or so, and we finally got it secured. And then from there, there's a second island, sister island, which was about 3-4 miles to the north of Saipan. It was called Tinian. And Tinian was also populated by Comoros. And Tinian was not as mountainous as Saipan, but it was pretty, maybe it was about 15 miles long or so. And that was pretty well fortified. Mm-hmm. When we hit Tinian, we did something which was a little unusual for Marine Corps invasions. Normally, we plan a whole beach land, a whole way would attack land on a beach like it did in Europe.
Right.
You know, you have a long beach. On Tinian, the Marine Corps decided they would make a feint maneuver at what they call Tinian City, which is somewhere down in the lower southern, the southwest part of the island. Tinian City has had good beaches, and the Japanese knew we were coming, and they had all their troops and material down there ready for it. And we had ships out there that looked like we were getting ready to invade. But the real invasion, we lived on a very narrow, rocky beach where you would never think to put a division. We put a division ashore in the northeastern end of the island, which took the Japanese completely by surprise.
Right.
There were defenders up there, and they had machine guns and everything. Machine guns took their toll and everything. But we were able to land with a minimum of casualties. They landed, maybe 10,000 men in a few hours. But the small arm fire did manage to stop us, and we weren't that strong enough, really, we could just push in. We had to wait for reinforcements, too. Well, the Japanese waited for reinforcement, too. When the Japanese came, too, down in Tinian, they got the word that the invasion was up north. That night, they said, I don't know how many men, I guess hundreds of men came up to do a banzai attack, and we were dug in. We were all set. At least the perimeter that we had was a very small perimeter. We dug in. We expected an attack in the morning, that they would come up and look for us. And if you dug in and they come to you, a banzai attack is an act of desperation. You very rarely accomplish anything with a banzai attack. There was a banzai attack on Saipan. We never experienced it, but the New York 27th Division did experience an attack by Japanese who were, at that time, were reduced to, instead of weapons, they had broomstick handles with nails in them. They were fighting desperately because we had managed to bomb all the supplies and equipment, and when about the third week of the battle, they were down to nothing, so they tried the banzai attack. But it's, as I say, it's an effort in futility. On Tinian, they came at us, and they had tanks too. The only thing is, the tanks were no match for our tank. Our tank in the Pacific was like the cream of the crop. Where in Europe, our tanks were not the cream of the crop, because the Germans had better tanks than we had. Yeah. But against the Japanese tanks, we did pretty good. We had bazookas, and we were able to break the back of that banzai attack on the second day. And from there, it was just a steady, plodding march, rough weather, and you would have intermittent machine gun fire here and there. They took a toll, but it wasn't as bad as it might have been. If we had attacked where they expected us to attack, we would have been met with a lot more fire, cannons and machine gun fire, mortars and whatnot. So we did Saipan and Tinian. Maybe about it was about a week apart. We Saipan in 1944 in June, finished that up, and I guess it was in July we were on Tinian, and we finished that up. Now, the 4th Marine Division had established a base, an advanced base, in a very nice place called Maui. I don't know if you know Maui. Yeah. Maui's in the Hawaiian Islands. It's a beautiful island, beautiful place. We all hated it because we were there, not for the scenery, but it was truly a beautiful island. And we had established a base. And the routine was we would plan our operations to leave from Maui, go into the operation, and then after the operation, come back to Maui, and then we'd start getting ready for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
So we crossed the Pacific, the international date line, maybe about 4 or 6 times, something like that. And we did that after with Saipan and Tinian back to Maui. We were getting ready for the next one. The next one was supposed to be a very small island, which is really cut the distance between the Marianas and Japan, Tokyo, in half. As I said, it was about 1,500 miles from the Marianas Islands to Japan. So they had this little small island, had an airfield on it, in a place called Iwo Jima. And we figured we were going to hit that. That should take about 4 or 5 days, because that's a very small island. Maybe it's only about 6 or 7 miles in length. The only problem is that it had high scaling walls from which the Japanese dug in cannons and all kinds of pillboxes all over the place. They had held it for many years. I think it was about 40 years. And they had fortified it, thinking eventually that we would be coming there. Well, they guessed right. There was no ploy here to hit Iwo Jima. They sent a tremendous naval force. And there, the beach, they had only one good beach. There was no place you could find shelter on either side of the island. It was shaped like a pork chop. Mm-hmm. So the 4th Marine Division and some of the units from the 3rd were with us, and a couple from the 5th, but the main assault was handled by the 4th Marine Division. The plan was, we found out later on, we didn't know it at that time, we would take Iwo Jima and then go directly to Okinawa. The plans for Okinawa were already set up with the 2nd Marine Division, which my friend Stewart was now in, and I get to see my friend Stewart on the island of Okinawa, which is a tremendously long island.
Yeah.
Well, when we got through with Iwo Jima, there was not much left of us. And they said, we're going to send you back to Maui. Mm-hmm. So 5 weeks on that little pork chop island. And the casualties were, they said, was the worst Marine Corps battle ever. Because they were ready and waiting for us.
Right.
And there was no shelter. The only shelter you had are the holes that our naval gunfire created on the beach, and the bombardment, you know, you create holes, craters. And that was the only shelter you had. No vegetation, nothing. And I took a machine gun squad ashore on that D-Day, February 19. And they had, I can't remember for sure, memory doesn't serve me correct, because at various times I was supposed to have either 7 men or 8 men. Mm-hmm. There's what they call table of organization. According to the manual, machine gun squad consists of 8 men. But I think at that time you might have had only 7, because guys get sick, you know, things happen. You're dealing with people, things happen. Or they transfer, there's shortages here, there. So they shift things around. You were constantly in a state of flux. Well, if I took 7 men ashore, by the end of the day I had 3 men. There were only 3 of us left. So a lot of bad things happened. I don't think we'll really go into all the details. We'll just say we were under heavy fire, and we took heavy casualties. At the end of the first day, our object was, as I said, we thought it was going to be a very easy operation with the naval bombardment and aerial bombardment that went on for weeks before we landed. And it was felt that it shouldn't take more than a few days to get it done. And our objective on the first day was to get up that beach, that black sandy beach, up to the airfield, which of course we needed, mainly because our bombers were coming back from Japan. Many of them were disabled and forced to ditch at sea before they could land. There were 2 main airfields that they were taking off from. One was Guam, which was south, a couple of 100 miles south of the Marianas, Saipan and Tinian. And the other was Tinian, We had the B-29 bombers, and as you know, the Enola Gay took off from Tinian. And they were coming back badly shot up.
Mm-hmm.
And they were ditching at sea, and we were losing pilots at sea. So we needed Iwo Jima, because that was only about 750 miles away from Japan. We needed the island, so give the bombers, crippled bombers, a chance to land before going all the way back to the Tinian. Well, even as the island was we were still fighting on the island. It took several days to get that airfield,
Mm-hmm.
but once we got it, and the small arm fires slowed down a bit, it wasn't secured yet. There were B-29s landing there, and the object was to protect the crews and everything. And in fact, one of the residents here at the Glen, Helen Anello, her husband was a machine gunner on a B-29, and I was doing something like you're doing now. I did her life story. I made a DVD of her life story,
Mm-hmm.
and she was telling her about her husband being in the Air Force over Japan, bombing Japan, and did I know that we had an island that had to be taken to save the bombers who were crippled, a place called Iwo Jima. I should have said, no, I don't know about that. Anyway, we were on Iwo Jima for 5 weeks, and we had very heavy casualties, and we had, usually military organizations travel with a supply of reserve people that they could fill in, because they know they're going to have casualties. So using our reserve and all, we were still down pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you're not going to go to Okinawa, we're going back to Maui, you're going to get ready for the invasion of Japan. That would have been my 5th invasion.
Mm-hmm.
I had I made 4 landings up until that time, and I had bad premonitions, because everybody was saying that's going to be the tough one, the really, really tough one.
Did you, on Iwo Jima, did you see the 5 American soldiers raise the flag?
Well, I didn't see them at the moment they raised the flag.
Mm-hmm.
But on the airfield, now we were about 2 miles up from Mount Suribachi, where the flag was raised. We were put into a reserve condition until we could get manpower. Other units took over the front line, and we were put in there. While I was up on the airfield, that's 2 miles away. I was looking down at Suribachi, I could see the mountain. I thought I spotted a little fleck of color up there. What the hell is that? Because you were still seeing smoke coming up. We didn't think that they had gotten up there. And I borrowed one of the officers' field glasses. I took a look. I said, son of a gun, there's an American flag flying up. They're up there. But what happened is they bypassed a lot of pillboxes to get up there. They got up there as fast as they could, but they took a tremendous beating going up, and they went by a lot of Japanese machine gunners and all.
How did you feel when you saw it? What went through your mind?
Well, I said, I'm glad that they're up there,
Mm-hmm.
but we're up here. We're not going to have
Right.
anything to do with Suribachi. We have to go north.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest part. Suribachi was at the bottom of the pork chop, and the north part had the greatest landmass, and that was all craggy slopes. It was a volcanic island,
Mm-hmm.
and if you dug down 2 feet, you could feel the heat in the earth. So I was glad that we got that part secured, and that hopefully when they finish, they'll send up people to help us. And about 2 weeks into the operation, we started to get mail. And one of the letters I got was a postcard from the New York State Guard threatening me with a court-martial because I had been missing the drills.
Wow.
I said, oh. So I
sorry.
told my sergeant, I said, Sergeant, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I had to get back. I'm missing the drills in New York State Guard. They want me back there. Can I go back? His expression was, get back to your foxhole. So anyway, we started to get mail, and one of the things I got that was distributed by the Navy was a little small edition of Time magazine. You know Time magazine?
Yeah.
Well, in World War II, they had printed a small edition of Time. It's a news magazine, and just for the servicemen overseas, they can get it over. They can see what's going on in Europe and all. Just see how the war is going. Just keep you informed. And as I sat there eating a sandwich, I was going through this small magazine, and I came upon a picture, photograph. It was all black and white, no color. It was a silhouette. I said, so look at this silhouette. There's 5 guys. They're trying to raise a flag on Mount Suribachi. I says, this is the most interesting composition I've ever seen in my life. I always liked drawing, fooling around with pencil and paper. I says, this is a masterful composition. I said, you know, when I get back, I'm going to try and do a picture. I'm going to enlarge this picture and do it. So I started drawing. We had nothing else to do. We were in reserve until we get up there. I had letterhead. I had a pencil. So on the letterhead, I was using this. I was drawing it. And I kept the drawing. And finally, when we got back to our base in Maui, I was serious. I said, I'm going to go get me some paper and some paint and all some watercolor. I think this picture is a great picture. At that time, it just came out. Nobody really knew what it was. Right. So I started painting it at Camp Maui. I got a bigger piece of watercolor paper. I bought some supplies. They weren't very good, but I started drawing and I started painting. Even though during the day we had things to do, it was only at night I had time under an incandescent light, and I started to paint it, and I rolled it up, put it under the cot, and suddenly I started seeing this picture is getting recognition all over the world. I said, there are artists who have turned it into full-scale watercolor, oil paintings, used for magazines and whatnot. So I was going to throw my picture away. Instead, it got ripped on the right edge and the left edge. I trimmed it down. I said, I'll put it away, and I'll finish it maybe sometime when we have more time. I'll try to finish it. I never did finish it. Well, about 60 years later, one of my sons, had seen the picture many years ago. It was in a portfolio. It never really came out. And I think it was Clint Eastwood had come out with the picture flags of my father. And he mentioned to some of his co-workers at MetLife that his father had tried doing a painting on it. There was some curiosity about it. So he dug the picture out. And he showed it, and it raised some interest. And then my other son, Stuart, he says, you know, that doesn't belong in the portfolio. He said, my son Stuart has a woodworking shop. He said, I'm going to make a frame for that picture. So he made a frame for the picture, and there it is.
Wow, you made that? You drew that?
Well, that's as far as I got. It's not a finished picture. But the kids thought it was worth something.
Yeah.
So they made a picture of it. And just it's not a great painting. The paintings that the artist made afterward in oil, of course, were much superior. But I'm not an artist. I'm not a professional artist. But yeah, I used to try to paint pictures of some of the men who were killed. Well, I would try to make a picture and I send it home to the family. I didn't do too many because some of the letters I got back in appreciation were really heartbreaking. And they want to know when, how, and why. They want to know all the details, how men got killed and all that. You know, war is hell. It really is. And if you try to describe it, it just can't be done. It can't be done. So, after Iwo Jima, back to Camp Maui.
Were you at Maui when you heard that the war had ended?
We were getting ready. We were out in the field. We were training. We were making practice landings, and we were setting up how to advance over terrain which was supposed to be similar to where we are now. And all of a sudden, somebody said, you know, they dropped a bomb on Japan that wiped out a whole town. And Wouldn't that be great if we had it for our invasion? And people say, yeah, it would be God, but that's crazy. No, because we had known that the Japanese had such capabilities of digging tunnels and deep into mountains that no bomb could get them.
Right.
And we could not believe the suggestion that that might end the war. And about three days later, I think they hit Nagasaki. And we heard this, that the Japanese were suing to talk peace. They were ready to talk peace. We couldn't believe it, because we knew them as tenacious fighters. They would rather die.
Right.
We had the kamikaze fighter planes. We had Japanese soldiers which would just throw themselves right into machine gun fire, you know, and it would. They were very tenacious. The Japanese soldier, as we felt it, really believed that he was going to get rewarded if he died in the cause of his country.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. In fact, our captain Snowden, the company commanding officer, after Nagasaki, he gathered us together, and he said, "Listen, men, there is word out that the Japanese are talking surrender, that we may not have. First, we get a pep talk on how this was going to be a tough battle. We think Iwo Jima was bad. We could lose like 1 million people on the invasion of Japan. We know how tenacious they are and how bad. We have to really knuckle down and train seriously. We cannot have people just slubbing off. That we want you to make believe whenever you're in training that this is the real thing. Dig your foxholes deep, don't dig them shallow, and make sure your weapons are clean, everything is just right, because this is going to be a tough battle." And then he gets us together and he says, "Listen, man, there are rumors here that Japan is suing for peace, but we know better. We want you to get out there and do your best. This is not make-believe. We're still going to do these landing exercises as if it's the real thing." And yeah, but it didn't take too long. Maybe within 2 weeks or so afterward, it was pervasive. Japanese were talking peace.
Mm-hmm.
They want to sign something with MacArthur aboard the battleship Missouri. And at that time, he said, "This is unbelievable. We don't have to do that landing." Mm-hmm. So we're very grateful. I was very grateful. And I have to say this, I think in all fairness. I was very happy to see the end of the war. I did not concern myself with any after effects of an atomic bomb. I was not interested. All I knew was I wanted to go home. I had 3 years,
Right.
and I had 4 landings, and I wasn't until the 5th one, and I didn't care about what happened to the Japanese at that point. That was then. Since then, I have questioned. I don't have answers. I have questions about the way it was done, why we had to do it, and if we had known more about what the atomic bombs will do to people's lives
Right.
down the years, throughout the years, to hundreds of thousands of people suffered. We could not know it at that time. So at the time I said the decision was the right one. But I just wish we could have done something else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now I feel terrible. My grandson has gone with a very nice Japanese girl, and I think it's serious. And they're human beings. Since the war ended, even Marine Corps and Japanese personnel who fought each other in 1945 have had reunions on the island. I haven't been there,
No.
but they both recognize that it was a madness. It was a crazy time. War is hell. But they were following their leaders, right? They had this guy, Tojo, who had grandiose ideas of his dominating the Pacific. And we did what we have to do. And it's the ordinary soldier in the field who would just as soon not be there, would be friends with them, anyone. You know, I visited Japan. I've been there several times. And I think the young people are lovely. I think it's a great society. And even our old commander, who became a general, Captain Snowden, who gave us the pep talk, he became a general, and he worked in Japan for many years as an advisor.
Mm-hmm.
And he says they're good people.
When did you come back home after the war ended?
I was released from service. Well, after the surrender thing was signed, there was a point system assigned for people going on. We had to have troops go to Japan. We weren't finished, even though they signed the treaty. We had to send people to Okinawa, to Japan. And but we didn't need that many now, so we were sending people home. And it depended on how much service, what type of action you had during the war. And if you were married, you had family, and all that counts. So there was a point system set up based on all these parameters, and you went back according to the number of points you went. Well, I didn't have enough points to go back home, so I figured I was going to Japan from here. I was a single guy, had no commitments. But before long, they reevaluated, and they said, well, this guy's got 4 landings, blah, blah, blah. We will send him home. So they sent me home in November of 1945.
Mm-hmm.
They sent me back home, and I received my discharge on the East Coast. And that completed, I was just a couple of weeks short of 3 years in service.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
And when did you marry Lillian?
Well, Lillian and I got together right away. By that time, her family had moved back from Massachusetts, and she'd been working, as I said, for this Ford plant. She was in Brooklyn, and she was the only girl I knew at the time. And we dated a few times. She was going steady with somebody, and she remembered the old days, and she said, I told her I was serious, I was very serious. She said, well, she likes me a lot. And we talked it over and talked it over. Finally, she had to tell the other fellow that she's making other plans. We married in 1946, May 19th of 1946. And she passed away 3 years ago, November. We had 61 years together.
Wow.
61 years.
And 2
She's
sons?
a great gal.
2 sons you have?
Do I what?
You have 2 sons?
Yeah, I have 2 sons. I have 2 sons, and I've got 2 grandsons. So we're not a very prolific family, but we get along great. We don't have any problems in our family. So.
And what are the names of your sons?
Well, Stuart lives right here in Queensbury. We moved up here to be near Stuart because Lillian had developed melanoma, which is cancer. And we knew that we would sooner or later need to be near children. My other son, who is divorced, he's living in New Jersey, Hoboken, New Jersey. And he kind of moves around a bit too, so we didn't want to bother Larry.
Right.
Larry is the older boy. So we moved up here to be close to Stuart. And Stuart has recently retired from ACC. He was the physics professor at ACC.
Okay.
Now it's called what? SUNY
Adirondack.
Yeah, SUNY Adirondack, yeah. So he's retired from there, but it's not a good retirement. His wife, Linda, has pancreatic cancer, and it looks like she's going through. Beautiful girl. When my wife was sick, Linda was very, very caring, solicitous of her. She took care of everything that Lillian needed done, and now she's not well herself. You know, that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very grateful. I came out more or less in one piece. I'm missing fingers here, not from the war. I did this to myself. No, I came out more or less intact, and I had a good life. What happened was, excuse me, I get a little teary-eyed too. You know what the hell, you know, man. So when I came out, I just wanted to forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I did get a job with another lithographic printer, and I was in line for an apprenticeship to again become a lithographic plate maker, and I worked for them 3 years. But the company did not really stay up with technology. It advanced so fast. It was a big company. It's a 100-year-old company at the time. It's a whole Germany company. And they had they did beautiful printing. And I was very happy to be with them because I felt I was going to have a good profession. It's a good job. The union is very powerful and all. But the company was facing bad time because they did not update their latest stuff. We had new photographic processes coming in which they did not keep up with. So after I lost my job with them, they said, we can't keep you anymore, we're folding, you know. So I had been working for another company that made typesetting equipment, and my hours were very good. And my overtime here, you want me to start cutting this short?
You're fine.
You're perfectly fine. We have 6 minutes left on this tape, and we have a whole new tape, so...
You're still using tape?
Yes.
You don't have built-in memory or flashcards?
This is an older camera.
Yeah, it's an older camera.
Yeah, oh, you should have told me. I could have given you mine. Anyway, I'll try to rush up. So the company folded, and I had this other job. I'd been working part-time as a sales representative, company from Wisconsin. And I worked for them selling in New York area. I was doing pretty well for 3 years or so with them, and they got a sales manager said I wasn't producing enough for the New York area and that we might have to get somebody else, you know, if I don't start doing better. And I got worried about my job and all. And a friend of mine worked for the New York City Fire Department says, listen, you make your own hours, right? I said, yeah, I make my own hours. He said, well, why don't you take a job in the fire department? A test is opening up. You could work in a fire department. You get plenty of free time, you know. You work at nights. If everything's good, you have a good night. You go out and sell the next day, whatever. So you can hold 2 jobs at one time. I said, really? And I was worried about losing this job. So what I did was he talked me into taking the physical exam, which I did. I did very well in the physical. And then the written test, I did very well. And the first thing you know, they called me to work as a fireman. And so I started working for a fireman and doing exactly what he said. I was working 2 jobs. I was raising the kids, you know, I had a mortgage and I had facing college. So I was going along fine for a while. And then I get a notice from the office in Wisconsin that they fired that sales manager. He was given the same crap to all the sales reps. Oh. You stay with us. You do what you do. Don't worry about losing the territory. You're going to have the territory. Mm-hmm. So I stayed. I was able to work for many years with 2 jobs. And then as the kids finished college, I kind of backed off and I said, I don't want to work too. My wife said, nah, you don't want. She was worried. There were rough times in the fire department, too. I took a promotion exam. I became a lieutenant. And things went along very well. And then they had a little accident. I got a bum knee. And the department says, you're not going to be able to do duty anymore. I had 27 years in already. They said, you got to make a choice. If you want to stay, you're going to have to work in the office. At first, I didn't mind working in an office. I never worked with women in my life. And it was very interesting at first, but I soon got a little tired of that. So they said, you work in this office where you don't like, or get out of the job. I said, I think I'll get out. So I retired. I had 27 years there. And I've been in retirement. I keep busy. I do a lot of computer work. I do a lot of film editing, you know. And, we've managed to travel quite a bit, my wife and I.
Yeah, did you guys volunteer overseas? And I read somewhere that you guys did some volunteer work.
Well, we became involved in interfaith relations. We lived in a mixed neighborhood. There were Catholic, Jews, Protestants, and everything. And And the priest there, Father Jack Kelly, he wanted to have an interfaith organization. And he started it, and he tapped me. I tried to resist it. But once he heard I was in retirement, he says, you're going to represent the Jewish organization. I said, no, Father, I don't have any experience with that. He says, you're going to do it. And Father Jack was very stubborn, and I became involved for 22 years.
Wow.
I was in with the Catholic Jewish organization of Rockaway. And my wife was involved in that too. My wife was a librarian, was a school librarian, and we were very fortunate. She had long vacations, I had long vacations from the fire department, and we were very fortunate. We were able to travel to Asia, Europe, South America, Africa, and all, and we had a lot of very good times together. It was a wonderful 61-year go. My wife was very philosophical at the end. She was not sorry. She's a year older than me, and when she was hit with this, she said, "This is the way it is. We've had a wonderful life," and she tried to talk me into. I think she was thinking we were going to be divorced when she leaves, but she was wrong. There's no divorce. So I'm still married, and I have a lot of lady friends here. It's warm, intimate, even affectionate.
Right.
But it's not intimate. We don't have any intimate, nothing going on. I'm too old and I don't want it. So that's it. So here we are, and I'm very grateful to still be able to get around. I drive, and I'm able to help my son Stuart. I was having a very difficult time, and I'm getting old, getting weak, and knees are killing me. The hearing is a big problem. I'm not too social because of the hearing problem. Because when I get into a crowded room, as long as I'm doing all the talking, it's fine. But when I get into a crowded room where other people are talking, I don't hear too well. So I do some things. You want to see something that I do on television?
Sure.
On video? Well, I have a number of projects. I have a website where I have YouTube. There's a lot of junk I put out on YouTube because YouTube is not fussy.
Right.
They'll take any kind of junk.
I'm going to have to interrupt you so I can
I'm
stop
just
this.
finishing up here. I don't know whether you'd appreciate. Oh God! Who made it so? Candide. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a Leonard Bernstein musical. They did a concert of it about 6-7 years ago in Avery Fisher Hall, and I thought it was really terrific. I felt about like I did that picture of when I saw the picture of Iwo Jima. So what I did was, I said, I'm going to take that, and I think we should show it if it had subtitles. No subtitles in them. Now, a lot of DVDs you buy, you have the option. You can pull up subtitles, and that's a great help. So what I said, I'm going to take Candide, and I'm going to try and give it subtitles, make my own subtitles. But the problem is I have to be able to hear, so I know what the people say before I do the subtitles. So, where is she? Okay, I think this would. Let me expand the timeline. In the opera, she does this one thing about she's working for as a call girl or a prostitute, actually. Yeah, and she's been captured, and she comes from royalty, actually, but she's a very pretty gal, and she's got a good voice.
Mm-hmm.
But she has misgivings about what she's doing. Let me see, get to this start. This takes about 3 minutes. Got 3 minutes?
No problem.
Okay. Yeah. So. Her name is Kunaganda, and she there's a narrator to this story.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull it up there. Okay. I didn't know Patti LuPone. I know she's a great gal on Broadway. She's a terrific singer too. And that's Patti LuPone. Christine Chenoweth is the heroine.
Yep.
Let me do. All right, so this is one of the songs in the show.
Okay.
This is the heroine. She's taking it over.
Okay.
My song, You Go. Go.
I put in all the time.
Yeah.
As a part I play, Pearls and ruby rings. How can worldly things take the place of honor lost? Can they compensate for my fallen state, purchased as they were at such an awful cost? Bracelets, lavaliers, can they dry my tears? Can they blind my eyes to shame? Can the brightest brooch shield me from reproach? Can the purest diamond purify my name? And yet, of course, these trinkets are endearing. I know the glamorous sapphire is a star. I rather like the 20-carat earring. If I'm not pure, at least my jewels are. Enough, enough. I'll take their diamond necklace and show me no more stars. I mean, gay and reckless. Observe how bravely I conceal the dreadful.
See, most of the people who wouldn't get the words.
Right.
They wouldn't get the words.
Yep,
I think the words are terrific. I think the lyrics are great.
they are. Do you like different kind of musicals?
Okay, but you see, that's the sort of thing I occupy my time. I'll sit here and I'll listen to it over and over, and I'll struggle to get the words because I have very bad hearing. But keeps me busy, and when it's finished, we'll present it as a program here and maybe some other places. I belong to an opera club, and I'm sure they would like to have it there too. But just getting it. It starts from here, you know. It starts from a disc, commercial disc. I don't know, no subtitles.
No?
I can't understand why
Yeah.
they do that. All right, ladies, I don't know what your time is like.
Thank you very much for
Yeah.
letting me interview. I very much appreciate it.
Well, all right. There's a lot of stuff, documentation I have in the way of printed flow. What is your report? You don't know Matt Dumas, do you?
Matt Dumas? I know who he is, yeah.
You know who he is?
Yep.
Well, he did this one. Let's see if I can find it. It's in here. It should be in here. Oh yeah. Don't do what he did. He did 55 pages.
Oh no, did he really? Wow.
This is what he ended up with. I don't know how he did. Well, what he did was he went he did a lot of research on the type of equipment we had. He did a lot of research on the campaign strategies, and he told me a lot of stuff that I didn't know was so. I learned a lot from him.
Right.
He had to tell me why I was here, why I was there, and everything. But yeah, but if you need any documentation, I do have maps and
Okay.
everything. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I'm just trying to look, I think I got an extra cartridge here. I stopped using this stuff some time ago. Yeah, I better check it out because I don't see any label on it, but there may be stuff on here I might want, yeah. All right, maybe we'll get together next time. And now I know you're using this stuff here, I want to get rid of it. Today everything is the memory cards and all.
Right.
The one I have records like 8 hours of video on it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. And they're good cameras, I tell you. The new ones, the Canon cameras are very good. I use them for I carry one in the car. They're so compact. They're like that. It's about the same size.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I will stop, and if I see something nice, I just take some still shots or,
Right.
or some video or whatever. I had one happen with, well, that was some time ago in the summertime when it was nice weather. I was up in Hadley. They have that bridge that crosses over the Hudson River. You know the bridge there? Well, I was up there just trying to see the waterfalls underneath that bridge. It's about 60 feet high. And all of a sudden some kids came along and started jumping off the bridge. So I had the camera. I got video of it. When I tried to point it out to some of the authorities that somebody could get hurt, I was told that the kids have been killed on that thing. They've lost a couple of kids that way. So why don't they do something?
Yeah.
They said, well, we tried, but the kids keep breaking it down. I said, okay. So they didn't need evidence. They knew what was going on. I've always liked taking pictures. I was taking film for many years. I have old film of my kids growing up. And I went through all the different formats for video, except beta. I never had a beta. But I did VHS and Super VHS and VHS-C and all kinds of stuff. And then the digital tape. I think for tape, this is the best medium that they came along with.
Right.
This mini tape is very good.
Yeah.
But now you don't need it. Tape is still a problem. You know? This with the new stuff, you know, it's all it's like instantaneous. You want to get to a spot, you can get to it right away. You don't have to wait to play the whole tape. Okay.
Yep. Thank you very much.
All right. So you know how to get home now, right?
Yes,
You live
we
in
do.
the Hudson Falls, is that right?
We actually, both of us actually, we live towards near Kingsbury, Fort Anne, more near that
Fort Ed.
area.
Yeah.
Than, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Matt's doing pretty good too. I got an email from him not too long ago. He's he wants to be a history major, and but in between he's taken to repairing computers.